Dr. Sarah, your brain gal here. I'm so happy you want to know more about this concept of neurons that fire together, wired together. What that means is we have a bunch of cells in our brain called neurons, and when they connect through a space called the synapse here. And there's electrical and chemical impulses that go across. And so when we say fire, what we're talking about is the electrical impulse that stimulates from one cell, one neuron to the other neuron, and that's what creates this chemical passage, this chemical message way between the two of them. So when we're talking about firing and wiring, we're talking about that electrical and chemical impulse. What does this mean though for learning? What this means is that every time you experience something different, every time you feel something, every time you think something, every time that you experience something with a friend, you have these firings that happen in your brain because the neurons begin to wire together. And the more you do it, the more repetitive that experience is. Every time you have that experience over and over again, these networks get stronger and they get bigger and they get faster. And so that's why we want to do things like study for a test over periods of time. Yes, I'm talking to you, teenagers, because we want to know that those neural networks are going to get stronger and they're going to fire together. That's why cramming only works for a short period of time because the learning isn't very strong. We don't have this repetitive stimulation of these neural networks. But when we're talking about teaching kids to control, we're talking about, this is the back of the brain, this is the front of the brain. We're talking about Franny and we're talking about Amy G here, right? And we're talking about building those networks, and we can build emotional control. We can build cognitive control by constantly stimulating these networks. That's why it's important to model those thought processes over and over because they experience it more, which makes those networks stronger. It's also why it's important to ask those questions. What does this little brain need to learn? What can I teach this little brain? And hey, Johnny, how's that experience for you? How could we do that differently next time? Or what are you thinking? Because that's going to stimulate those neural networks over and over again. So use the concept of firing together and wiring together to your advantage. Make your kids' brains stronger.